What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to episode number 286 of the VK Bros with Jason and Alex VK. And I'm broadcasting to you from the new digs. So I hope you guys enjoy the new studio without the disgusting bookshelf behind me. I just have a regular old cabinet now. I am looking for feedback on things like the tinniness of the audio, because there's a lot of hard surfaces in this room. So hopefully we can get that dialed in for you over the next few weeks. But happy to be here. How are you going this week, Alex? Obviously, big show ahead as usual. What's happening?
Good. I had a very productive week this week. A lot of the cars that I bought were extremely popular at the auctions and got great results. I have renegotiated a deal which really helps me. Thank you to the people involved in that. 2026 is going to be a very, 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 very good year. So I'm gassed up.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, well, I feel a very similar way. So we
go to jail for hate speech.
Yeah, for retrospective hate speech.
Yeah.
Because, we have a few hundred hours of content online, which would probably run afoul of these new hate speech laws which passed this week. So, look, I think that's a really good place to start. Things we're going to cover on this week's show, obviously the hate speech laws which just passed, the fallout that happened after that, and it's interesting. I was even saying to you during the week, we could not have called it better on last week's show, how this whole thing went down, so we'll dive into that. And obviously, it's Davos week for the World Economic Forum. So we will go into, we both listened to Donald Trump's speech. We've got a clip from Howard Lutnick, which we think is extremely interesting.
I've listened to heaps of speeches from WEF this year.
Yeah, nice.
I've done the work, so you don't have to.
Well, that's what we're here for, right? So let's start with the hate speech legislation. So it passed. And as Alex predicted, the massive hate speech laws that were already pre-written, and there's a lot of people speculating that these were on their desks for months prior to Bondi, because this is something they've been pushing for ever since. I mean, really, it's been the last 5 years. It's been Liberal and Labor together pushing for more and more crackdowns on Australians' freedom of speech. So the theory is that these laws have been written for months by some sort of unnamed lobby group. They've been sitting on their desks waiting for the right event to happen. Bondi's come along and, hey presto, to fight Islamic terrorism attacks in Australia, we are withdrawing gun rights from law-abiding gun owners, and we are cracking down on Australians' ability to speak freely. And as Alex predicted, they shot for the stars, and then they offered a slightly watered-down bill, and that's the one that got the Liberals' support to then get passed. Now, what is interesting about this? Number one, we said this last week, but we'll say it again. These laws are terrifying. They are the most draconian speech-related laws in Australian history. We have all seen what's been happening in the UK, 12,000 arrests in 1 year for online posts. And according to legal scholars and the Law Society, the benchmark that these laws need to reach to run afoul of them is actually lower than the UK's laws. So theoretically speaking, we could actually put more people in prison than what is happening in the UK. And I don't think the UK's ones are retrospective either, or retroactive. So
Definitely not.
No. So this is wild. Now, I think the biggest thing that's going to be interesting out of the laws themselves, because we'll talk about the fallout in a second, but this weekend is going to be the biggest test of these laws, because we're recording this on Friday the 23rd of January, and on Monday is the 26th, also known as Australia Day. Also known as the day every single year where some Australians march or wave the Australian flag, which could literally be deemed as offensive under these laws if waving an Australian flag makes an immigrant of some description feel fear or intimidation. At the same time, every single year for the past however many years, we have certain contingencies who march on Invasion Day protests. So obviously anti-Australian colonialism, which could cause fear and intimidation to regular Australian citizens who are just trying to go about their business. So this weekend is going to be wild. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens.
Has it passed, or
It
has
has.
it just made it through the Senate?
It's passed, and been ratified by the Crown or whatever it is that they have to do. So it's law now. As of right now, Friday, it is law.
So interesting follow, because I'm the single guy that has very little responsibility outside my work. I get to watch a lot of this content to try and put together. But a great follow is this lady her channel's called Constitutional Clarion.
Yep.
And she's like a scholar about the Constitution, everything around the Australian Constitution. And dude, she said these rules suck.
Yeah.
She's like, she basically said it's so broad and so undefined, it is guaranteed to be problematic.
Of course. I mean, the fact is, these laws state there doesn't even need to be a victim.
Yeah.
The test that is called the reasonable person test. All that the minister needs to decide is that if a member of the targeted group, quote unquote, could feel fear or intimidation from seeing those words written, then you run afoul of the law, whether there is a victim or not. Like, how this will not be weaponized and selectively enforced, it's just not possible. Like, of course that's what's going to happen, because one person's normal speech is another person's hate speech.
Where I was a bit concerned is, and I think I had a clip, we don't need to show it, I guess I can just explain it, is when some of the media were asking particular politicians about it, they were very particular in exactly who they're calling out with this law, to the point where I think what's the legal general's name? The
Attorney General, Michelle Rowland.
She literally said these laws are targeted at I can't remember that there's some Islamic terrorist group.
Oh, Hizb ut-Tahrir, I think it is.
Hizb ut-Tahrir, yeah. And the NSN.
And the neo-Nazis. But the reality is they're not, because Hizb ut-Tahrir and the NSN aren't listed in the laws.
But so you've got that, you've got what you just said, but my brain also went, where was the relation between those two organizations and what happened? Like, what has Nazi groups got to do with anything? They've done nothing.
Well,
there's been nothing.
The irony is, if the NSN got what they wanted, those two wouldn't have been in Australia in the first place.
Yeah, that's the irony for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But I've had some arguments with some people over this. This is the problem with speech laws. Like, speech laws are guaranteed to fail. You cannot do what the laws are intended to do. It's impossible to restrict speech and get the desired result. And you see that Chris Minns, the Premier of New South Wales, saying it he says it all the time, flippantly. We don't have free speech protections in Australia like America does, and that's a good thing, because we're going to build like a cohesive society.
Yeah, because we have a multicultural society, we don't have the same free speech protections that the Americans do.
But the way he's saying it is like, well, we're going to do things to create social cohesion. A government cannot create social cohesion. And by building wedges, these are going to create social...
friction.
Friction.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, and even my lefty friends hate the idea that these protect certain religions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm with you. I totally get it. I'm like, yeah, I'm with you, dude. That's why there should be no laws around speech. Outside of direct incitement to violence.
Which is what the standard was prior to these laws coming through. Yeah.
Yep. I can cop that. If you directly incite violence, sure, because we don't want violence. Okay?
But here's the thing, though, right?
But hate. But sorry.
Yeah,
but hate. It is fine for us to hate things.
Of course.
It's our right to hate. We don't have to like everything. And no government is going to tell us that we have to like everything.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
And also, you think that just naming some organizations is going to stop it? Aren't you just going to create more organizations? Isn't that list just going to be an infinite length long? If you are a truly hateful person and you're wanting to literally build a group, you can't change the name?
Yeah.
You can't say other things. You know, I always think about this all the time. Like, YouTube's got really strict rules about some of the words you can use.
Yeah.
They've just created new words. Everyone knows what the new words are. We know it means the old word.
Yeah.
So you haven't achieved what you think it's going to achieve.
Exactly.
You haven't stopped people from talking about it. They've just changed the words. They've worked their way around it. That is exactly what's going to happen here. And it's really, people aren't hating this enough. This is a crazy, crazy, crazy law. Not just because it's not going to do what you think it's going to do, but because the mere idea of trying to police speech is insane.
Yeah. And I don't see how this doesn't fall over literally at its first test. I just don't understand it. And like I think I said this on the show last week. It's all centered around speech that may incite fear or hatred in the targeted group. I can tell you right now, I'm fearful of these laws. I'm a podcaster. I say things online. We discuss complex issues on this platform, and we try to have honest conversations about them. And sometimes when you're trying to get to the bottom of complex issues, you say things which aren't politically correct. Mm-hmm. It's just part of the process. Laws always, even around speech, intent used to matter. So like we said before, the standard used to be direct incitement to violence. So that means the intent was to incite violence.
Yeah.
Now these laws literally don't even need a victim. They don't need anyone to actually be offended. It's just if a reasonable person of that group may feel fear or intimidation if they saw those words.
So I've even watched a bunch of ex-politicians talking about this matter. And where I'm getting even more disappointed is the automatic assumption that governments need to do new laws.
Yeah, or
to
something.
combat this. Yeah. Now, I think the thing, and we spoke about it here, the thing they should have done is what the laws already said.
Yeah.
We know what people were saying at the Sydney Opera House. We know what people were saying on the bridge. I'm not saying you have to arrest them. You might keep an eye on them.
But the thing is, too, those technically were incitements to violence. So you already had those laws on the book.
Not just that, you also had licensing. Like, it kind of falls into the thing that I wanted to do about AUSTRAC. There seems to be more effort going into making sure that money doesn't leave the country. And yet you're more than happy to leave someone with a firearms license to leave to go to a known Islamist extremist training ground and then come back in and not ask any more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Or honestly, it could have taken a couple phone calls and this thing might not have happened.
And again, just a reminder, guys, of the people that the Australian government has banned from the country because they're too dangerous. Like Candace Owens, like Katie Hopkins, like a couple of chicks who just so happen to have, Miley Yiannopoulos, third chick. A couple of people who just happen to have views which the government doesn't like. But they're not violent people. They've never advocated for violence ever. And the problem is, like, we have heard through the news about these hate preachers in Western Sydney who are consistently trying to, quote-unquote, radicalise their the people who come to watch them speak. We had direct incitement to violence laws in place already for literal years.
Just didn't use them.
We didn't use them. So again, if you're not even applying the existing laws that we already have, what makes you think that you should have more laws?
That was totally my argument against my friend that said that there should have been laws, that there needs to be stricter speech laws. I said, what is the point if they're not going to use them?
Yeah.
They already have shown that they're not going to use them because we already have a law that should have stopped it wouldn't have stopped this.
No.
But there definitely could have been some action around that space. We chose not to use them. Mm-hmm. What makes you think new versions are going to be any different?
And you also have to remember, they rushed these through before the Royal Commission has even concluded. So before the Royal Commission that we have called to actually understand how this happened in the first place, what the failings were, and the actions or recommendations that are made out of that Royal Commission for us to do moving forward, before any of that, we've just rushed these things through. And the reality is, like we've said, they wanted these laws in place anyway. They were just waiting for a justification to do so. So should we talk about the fallout?
Well, yeah. The best lead-in, you didn't give me the chance to do a great lead-in. I was like, the opposition's response to this was disgusting.
Absolutely disgusting.
Again, we've spoken about it here before. Liberal and Labor are essentially the same party. Yep. They should be called Laboral. They should join their own coalition.
Labial.
I've heard Susan Lee talk about it. Oh, we got exactly what we wanted in that bill. Like, it's the same fucking bill split into two.
Correct.
Right? Which is what I said last week. What they do, they put the crazy one out there. They see what everyone thinks. They give you the middle ground, which they thought they could get away with. They desensitize you, but they didn't really remove anything. They just separated the gun stuff from the speech stuff.
Yep.
It's the same thing.
And also, they said that they removed the racial vilification part, but they didn't, because they removed that section that everyone was questioning, but then they changed one of the definitions in the bill, so it's just covered anyway, just in a different spot. Like, literally underhanded tactics. So a few things that have happened since then. For the last few weeks, even months, we have been spruiking Andrew Hastie as the next potential leader of the Liberal Party. Did you see his post that he made after voting yes for this bill? After like 2 or 3 days prior to the vote, putting a reel up saying that he was never going to vote for it? Listen to this. I've been through all the comments on my previous post. Despite the nastiness, I would still vote the same way. The mission was to get the best possible outcome for the country, and we had to play the hand that we were dealt. I chose to back in the Shadow Home Affairs Minister, Senator John O'Doonium, who worked his ass off to get the best possible deal with the Albanese government. Otherwise, Labor would have cut a deal with the Greens with a far worse bill. Politics is not for everyone. It's like war. You got to remember Hastie's ex-SAS. Things go wrong, and you often only get a choice between multiple bad options. Get this bit. Purity is for keyboard warriors and paid influencers. Thanks for clarifying where you all stand. Cheers.
What an absolute dog. And so, the Greens didn't want that bill.
No, they didn't. They were never going to support this bill.
So that was a miscalculation.
It's not even a miscalculation. It's a lie. It's a straight up lie trying to defend what he did. So I posted on it from the VK Bros. I said, quote marks, politics isn't for everyone. Brother, you literally said a few days ago you were voting against this to get us all on side, and now you're surprised to receive criticism, and your reaction is to condescend? Read the room, mate.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, guys. We're hopeful people. Now, can you guys hear my son crying in the background? Okay, let's pause this and I'll come back. Sorry about that little break, guys. We're back. So yeah, Andrew Hastie. Alex and I are optimists. We hope for the best and we prepare for the worst. It's basically how we approach the world, we approach life, etc. One of the ultimate black pills that I think a lot of people on the conservative side of politics are taking at the moment is that you can't ever change anything. You know, voting doesn't matter, all this sort of stuff. It's just totally defeatist. And whether it changes something or not, we are still believers in if there's an option for you to try and do something to change things for the better, you should try that thing even if it fails. And then you try something else, right? We are optimists. So we were spruiking Hastie, and it's interesting because...
I wasn't.
Well, I was mentioning Hastie.
Yeah, and just a quick side note, just so I can have it on the record there. He seemed performative to me.
Yeah,
the only thing I liked about him is the way he looked.
Yep.
He seemed like a strong leader, but I'd never put my... Well, for a start, I don't give a fuck who's going to be in the Liberal Party, because they're dead to me.
Yeah, well, the reason why I had, again, hope and optimism when it comes to Hastie was the fact that it appeared he was actually taking stands on certain issues. So we covered a little while ago, he was the shadow immigration minister. And then Suzanne Ley said that he could take no part in actually crafting the coalition's immigration policy because he wanted to slow the immigration. So he resigned from that portfolio. So things like that, it looked like he had some sort of principles that actually aligned with the Liberal Party. Now, this is where it gets interesting, right? So when these bills got passed through, I was pretty active on social media, on X and on Instagram. Because you have to actually voice your opinions to these people. Now, one of the saddest things in the world is Suzanne Ley has literally no followers on X. Like, she's supposed to be the leader of the coalition, and we're going to cover. She's probably not going to be there for much longer. She's got 34,000 followers.
Right.
So someone who could potentially be the leader of this country, she's got 34,000 followers.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she puts this post up talking about how proud she is to get these bills, this bill through, and we're doing these things to keep Australians safe, and blah, 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 blah. So it's had 16,000 views. How many likes do you think it's had?
12.
Close. 21.
Get out.
It's had 21 likes. It's got 706 comments.
That's called a ratio.
That is called ratioed. And everyone is going off about it. And so I posted on it, very, very simple. I took a screenshot of the Liberal Party's beliefs from their website. Let me read this to you. Our beliefs. We believe in the inalienable rights and freedoms of all peoples.
Yeah.
And we work towards a lean government that minimizes interference in our daily lives and maximizes individual and private sector initiative. In government that nurtures and encourages its citizens through incentive, rather than putting limits on people through the punishing disincentives of burdensome taxes and the stifling structures of Labor's corporate state and bureaucratic red tape. In those most basic freedoms of parliamentary democracy, the freedom of thought, worship, speech, and association. So I just posted that on it. I took a screenshot.
That's the first page, right? That's
it's
like
literally at the top of the first page.
Yeah.
And I just said, you not only spat on the will of the Australian people when you voted for this bill, but you spat on the Liberal Party's own values.
Yeah.
Like, how does controlling people's speech and threatening to put them in prison for saying a naughty word for 5 years, how is that anything to do with those values?
It's literally the opposite. But I think this is a little bit of a syndrome. Sorry.
Hold on. Sorry, give me 1 sec. Okay, we're back again. I want to apologise for the interruptions, guys, and I want to make a shout out to all the parents out there who've been enjoying school holidays with having your children home for the last 6 weeks. We are so close, everyone. Today, when this is dropping, well, it'll actually drop on Sunday because we're dropping the videos on Rumble and YouTube on Sunday mornings now, just to try to get a little bit of extra traction that way. But you're this close, guys. Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday, those kids go back to school. So let's all just do our best to keep it together until all the kids are back out school again.
I mean, it's not all like fine dining and on my part either. Like I had a completely silent nap before this show started because I had, there was a couple of moments. Went out for lunch with mum and dad. Today went to the gym this morning. It's not easy for me either. I just want you to know that.
Mum and dad were probably like, man, I can't wait for him to go back to work. He's so burdensome. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. I have loved spending this extra time with my kids. It's actually been really, really good. But when you're trying to get something done in a very echoey house, it's not the greatest to have them around getting stuck into each other. All right, Alex, sorry, I interrupted you before. Where were you?
So I haven't given any credence to the Liberal Party really for years, to be honest.
Yeah.
And as bad as it sounds, I haven't given the Liberals my vote for 10 years.
Yeah, it'd be a decade now, yeah.
Yeah. They're not an opposition party. Like Jason, you remember this. We used to sit in the car when we worked in Tweed and we're driving up to the Gold Coast every day. We would listen to Question Time on ABC, and the parties would battle.
Yeah.
They'd battle everything. This might have been when Tony Abbott was in, and he was a beast.
Yep.
Right? And he had great arguments, and in some ways, I know we got a little bit frustrated back then because sometimes it seemed like they were fighting for the sake of fighting.
Yeah.
But you called the opposition.
Yeah, that's right.
For a reason, right?
Yeah.
So what coming into the next election, what can you possibly provide the Australian people?
Yeah,
because you're not anti-Labor and you're not liberal anything.
Like, name a piece of legislation that the Liberal Party has stopped the Labor Party getting through in the last 4 years.
Zero.
Zero. They've supported everything.
So
They are the uniparty.
hearing Susan Ley talk about how proud she was that they were able to change and amend that bill to exactly what they wanted. Bro, it's the same bill.
Yeah.
You've done nothing, and you haven't listened to anyone, any of your constituents. You haven't even listened to the people within your own coalition.
2 million Australians emailed MPs about this bill in the lead up to it. 2 million Australians.
So do you want to explain then what happened with the Nationals?
Yeah, okay. So that's where these things do start to get a little bit interesting from a politics perspective. So let's wrap up the bill. The bill's fucked, but it's now law, and we just have to deal with it. And hey, you never know what sort of ramifications it's going to have for the show, for the podcast. We will still attempt to continue being as honest with you as we possibly can about all these subjects, because that's what we think is the best thing to do to add value to the world. But hey, you never know when the police are going to start knocking, just like they do in the UK at the moment. So we'll have to keep you posted on that stuff. But from a political perspective, this is essentially spelling the end for the coalition, the Liberal National Coalition, because the 3 of the shadow ministers from the Nationals crossed the floor to vote against the bill, even though Suzanne Ley had said that they were not allowed to. So as part of the forming of the coalition, they essentially made the rule that you are not allowed to vote against the will of the coalition. But they crossed the floor anyway. Mm-hmm. Now, from the Nationals' perspective, this is like the first time they've shown real backbone in a long time. Mm-hmm. So credit where it's due. So when they crossed the floor, Suzanne Ley literally was going to force them to resign from their shadow ministry positions. And they basically said, you can't fire me, I quit. Because obviously we're not supporting this, we're out. And then David Littleproud, who is the leader of the Nationals, he sent a letter to Suzanne Ley saying, if you force these 3 shadow ministers to quit the ministry, the other 8 of us that hold those positions are quitting as well. And she urged him to reconsider, and he basically said, go fuck yourself, we're done. Mm. And he's done interviews during the week saying the coalition is now untenable. The relationship's untenable. So this is the end of the coalition. They're done. Now, what happens next is very, very interesting from here.
Well, hold on. Before we get on to what happens next,
yep.
There is, I've watched a lot of interviews, and I'm not very impressed with, what's the Nats leader's name?
David Littleproud.
Littleproud. He had essentially 3 talking points. That's not the way you do it. The Liberal Party's not what it was. Susan Ley hasn't handled it very well. And then outside of that, he could not answer any questions.
Right.
And people were pizzling him. I'm actually very impressed by whoever the reporter is at Sunrise. She's like grilling these politicians. She's like, well, that's a direct attack at Susan Ley. So who do you want to be the leader? And he's like, well, it's not my choice for who was to be the leader. And he's like, well, you've decided, you forced this to happen. Yeah. So clearly there's someone that you want. Who is it? So that's why, to me, the Liberal, although this is a significant event, they're irrelevant.
Yeah.
Now, it is very significant because they are the 2-party preferred system.
Mm-hmm.
This is the most significant change in Australian politics. We may have just given Labor their 3rd term.
Correct.
Which is hugely damaging. But it does leave the door open.
And what does it leave the door open for, Alex?
One nation.
Yeah, so this is where things get very interesting to see where things go from here, guys. Because obviously, One Nation has been surging in the polls lately. And we covered on the show 2 weeks ago where they were actually neck and neck for the first preferred vote. They were neck and neck on 23%. So still both trailing Labor, but neck and neck. And with the way that the 2-party preferred system in Australia works, it's all down to preferences. So if One Nation's primary vote was able to overtake the Liberal National Party's primary vote, then the preferences would flow to either Labor or to One Nation. Now, Where this coalition split gets really, really interesting is now votes for the Nationals will no longer flow to the Liberal National Coalition. So the Liberals are going to have to stand on their own 2 feet. Now, I can't even remember if we covered it on last week's show or we've just spoken about it during the week. But the two conservative parties whose values most closely align are actually One Nation and the Nationals.
Yeah.
Very old school values, right?
Yeah.
And for us as Queenslanders, they're values that we probably share. But a lot of the other bigger states like New South Wales and Victoria, they think that we're all a bunch of backwards rednecks and whatever because we believe in some old school values. But their values actually fairly closely align. Now, where this gets really interesting for me too. So you were saying you weren't impressed with David Littleproud. David Littleproud is the reason Barnaby Joyce resigned from the Nationals Party in the first place because of weak leadership. Yeah. So imagine this. One Nation and the Nationals form the next Conservative coalition. Barnaby becomes the leader of the Nationals underneath the One Nation banner.
Ooh.
Because what's interesting about this whole thing, right? So think about it from Pauline Hanson's perspective. I think Pauline has been planning for a real tilt at running the country for a long time. That's why she made certain moves. Remember, she pulled her name off the party name. It used to be called Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party. It's now just One Nation. She pulled her name off it. She recruited Barnaby Joyce. And Barnaby's key because, love him or hate him, the fact is he's kind of like the Shane Warne of politics. He's been from the penthouse to the shit house and to the penthouse and then back to the shit house again. But he's a stayer and he keeps winning his own seat. And his seat's pretty safe because his local electorate actually supports him quite well.
He works for them. He crosses from the spot and he's talking about the people here and not interested in new city slickers.
He's the perfect example to me of... he's the guy that we need in politics, but that our current social climate can't accept. He is a flawed human being.
Yeah.
He does some real dumb shit.
He's calm catter,
yeah. But he does some real dumb stuff in his private life. But he actually does the job of being a politician really well for his constituents.
Yep.
So we've got to stop pretending that anyone in life is perfect. We are all flawed human beings, politicians included. But to me, the number one factor for whether or not you should be a politician is whether or not the things you do supports your constituents or supports some globalist agenda, like we've literally seen for decades. And he supports his constituents, which is why he keeps being voted back in because they like him. So he's a key figure. Because up until Barnaby joined One Nation has never, ever held a seat in the lower house. And because of the idiosyncrasies of the way that our political structure works, if you want to be Prime Minister, you must hold a seat in the lower house. Mm-hmm. So if Pauline wanted to be Prime Minister, she would have to quit the Senate and run for a lower house seat. And there is no guarantee that she will win that seat. So having Barnaby come across, who is a little bit younger than her, but he's very experienced as well, he could potentially be the next Prime Minister under a One Nation Nationals coalition. Because if the Liberal National Coalition breaks up, that means that, like I said, the Liberals would have to stand on their own 2 feet. If the Liberals' first preferences don't exceed One Nation's, then all of the Conservative preferences, and this includes people that vote for the Liberals first, will end up flowing to One Nation. Now, you brought up something interesting last week too, which I'd never even thought of, which could be spurred on if the Nationals do form a coalition with One Nation. Do you remember that idea?
Yeah, Liberals.
The Liberals.
Yeah.
There's every chance that the Liberal Party and the Labor Party could form their own coalition.
And they will do it out of pure desperation to remain relevant.
Yeah. But I think the thing that...
Because that's a win for Labor. If Labor then goes and grabs essentially the second best, or now would be the third or the fourth best person, roll them into their party, well, that's a massive win for Labor. They will become irrelevant to they will have to yield to everything that Labor does. But they've kind of already been doing it.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be.
But the number one thing for me that would do is destroy the Liberal-Labor duopoly and this illusion of choice that we've had in this country for literally since its inception. Like, we've had this illusion of choice between you either vote Liberal or you vote Labor, and you pretend that they're going to be different. That would destroy that. You would actually have a genuine conservative option if this was to happen. And I think I've just lost Alex now. Hold on. I'll come back. All right. I might just call this episode Technical Difficulties. But yeah, so what I was saying before, if the Liberal Party did occur, the Liberal Coalition, it would destroy the illusion of having two separate options in Australia. And you would actually go from having two essentially left-wing parties, being Liberal and Labor, to an actual genuine left-wing choice in the Liberals and a genuine right-wing choice in the One Nationals coalition.
Yeah. I
right?
like that.
So it would be an absolute landscape.
It's a natural evolution. It's where it should end up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just and it's interesting because
I think it won't work though is Pauline has been very steadfast, and it's funny because I've been watching. I actually like to watch international telecasts on Australian politics because listening to a lot of Australian stuff, you get stuck in the weeds a bit. So I like to listen to outside economists talk about what's happening here, and they were showing clips, the little thing that they put together, and they were showing clips from Pauline Hanson from 25 and 30 years ago, saying the same shit. And I just don't think, and she has said, we're not poaching anyone. And I get the feeling that she's not willing to compromise her position, even if, and she is in a place of power right now. She's very popular right now.
Yep.
But if the Nats come in and they say, if Little Proud thinks that he's going to get a good seat at the table, probably not going to go well. If he thinks he's going to come in above Barnaby, that's probably not going to go well.
Well, I agree with you, and that's why I think that it would just literally be a case of Pauline's the boss. So if you're coming on board in the coalition, we're going to combine our preferences and whatever, but Pauline's the boss. And just like you just spoke back at Suzanne Ley for not allowing you to exercise your democratic rights, there's no democracy here either, brother. You're either in or you can languish out in the sticks on your own. Oh, I've just lost him again. Okay, we're back again.
I'll tell people what I was doing, and I'm the reason for it to fuck up this time.
Well, you weren't really, because obviously the first two times was from my end, and these next two times are from your end, so we're even.
I was trying to be fancy. I wanted to get onto poly markets, and like we discussed last week, poly markets has just been blocked by the Australian government because they don't want you to have a good time, and they don't want you to know. They'll give you access to Gallup polls, which will give you dog shit information.
Yeah.
But they won't let you access poly markets, which is a prediction market, which is 90% accurate, because it's got a gambling element to it. But anyway. So I was setting up my VPN, and every time I did something with the VPN, it just it chomped me out. So my apologies. I'll have the VPN set up prior to our next one, so I can have poly markets operational.
So just so you're aware, Tony Burke and the rest of the government that's currently listening to this show, Alex was unable to access Polymarket, so he didn't break the law in Australia.
Hey, and I hate that law.
You'll have to find something else to get us on, which I'm sure we will.
Can we move on? We have to talk about We have to talk about the WEF. We have to talk about the WEF.
Yeah,
we've done the Australian thing.
We can. Can I just quickly, before we do that, just talk about that? I got ChatGPT to summarize that conversation I was telling you about. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Because I think this sort of leads us into economy stuff a little bit when it comes to the WEF.
Well, okay. Do you want to start with that or tell people what the WEF is?
So I want to start with this, and we'll go to the WEF after. I'm just going to do this really, really briefly. So we talk a lot on the economy. We talk a lot about the economy, on this show, and we've been saying for months that we see some things coming, like obviously inflation's going to keep rising because we are essentially still having too many immigrants coming in, and this is not against immigrants. I don't blame the immigrants, it's against the politicians who keep bringing them in, because the reality is, if you have more people in the country spending money into the economy, that drives up inflation. So I was talking to ChatGPT the other day, and I had a really interesting chat with them, because in my head, the government's kind of stuck in it's sort of like what Andrew Hastie said. The economy is not for everyone, and just like war, sometimes you're left with only bad choices. That's where our government is at the moment, because in my mind, here's the way that I see things. Our entire economy is essentially held up by immigration at this point in time, because we have zero productivity. So zero productivity means you just need to keep bringing more bodies in. I said on the show a few weeks ago that the Australian government gets something like 53 to 55% of its taxes from income tax. So just to keep paying the bills, they want as many bodies earning money, and so they can pay income tax as possible to keep the money rolling into the coffers.
Sorry, just a quick side note, that 50% is of the revenue generated inbound to government.
Yeah.
It is not a reflection of how much that covers in government spending. Which
No.
could probably be fucking 5%.
Yeah, it's just total revenue, yeah. So I had this conversation with ChatGPT because we're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to immigration. Because if you continue bringing immigrants in, inevitably it's going to lead to inflation. Inflation then leads to the RBA increasing interest rates, and then the whole bunch of cost of living problems that comes from that. But if you stop immigration, the economy essentially falls over. So we are literally stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I asked ChatGPT to summarize the conversation that we had, and I just thought you guys might find it interesting. So, big picture. Australia's economy and housing market are stuck in a tight balancing act. Policymakers are trying to control inflation without triggering unemployment or a housing crash, but structural problems make this extremely difficult. First subject, immigration. Immigration is being used to support headline economic growth and avoid recession. It pushes up housing demand and rents in the short term. At the same time, it suppresses wage growth at the margin, especially in services. The net effect, short term, mildly inflationary, especially rents. Medium term, it helps contain wage-driven inflation. So for those of you who don't know what that means, it keeps your wages low. Cutting immigration would likely reduce rent pressure eventually, but risk weaker GDP growth, labour shortages, and recession. Conclusion, immigration continues because it's the least bad option, even though it lowers per capita living standards. Second subject, inflation and interest rates. Inflation remains sticky, particularly in housing and services. The RBA is trapped. Cutting rates risks reigniting inflation. Hiking rates risks unemployment and financial stress. And just on this note, I just saw a news article today. The unemployment numbers came out yesterday, and they are way stronger than people are expecting, which is further strengthening the RBA's case to hike rates next month.
So it's down? The
unemployment is down. So therefore, it is even more likely the RBA will hike rates next month. And for those of you long-term listeners of the show, you'll know that we've been saying for months that they were going to hike rates in February. So the RBA is trapped. Cutting rates risks reigniting inflation. Hiking rates risks unemployment and financial stress. Banks raising fixed mortgage rates reflects markets pricing higher for longer, not necessarily imminent large RBA hikes. So what that's talking about, a lot of the major banks, twice in the last 3 months, have increased the interest rates they offer for 1 and 3 year fixed rate terms, which is pricing in higher rates in the future.
Yeah, it's a signal for sure.
Correct. The most likely outcome, rates stay elevated for longer, at most 1 or 2 small hikes unless inflation worsens materially. Now, I think 1 or 2 hikes is the minimum for this year, because I believe that inflation will worsen materially, because Labor's forecasts always seem to be wrong, and in the wrong direction every single time.
Yeah.
So next subject, wages, debt and productivity. Wage growth is not keeping up with the higher cost of living. Australia has record household debt, high exposure to variable interest rates, very weak productivity growth. Productivity is the missing escape hatch. Without it, wages can't rise sustainably. Result, living standards fall even if GDP rises.
Can I talk about productivity?
Yes.
Can I comment? Okay. Had this conversation with my friend today at the gym, and he's very numbers orientated. Australia is incapable of fixing the productivity issue. The Labor government, the Liberals, the Laborals, I would even go as far to say One Nation's got a small plan, but why this is going to be exponentially worse is that there is one way to increase productivity in the Australian marketplace, and that is to deregulate.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, our Labor government does not even know how to spell deregulate.
Yeah.
And on top of that, their business model has been to employ more regulators to regulate the regulators, to build this massive bureaucracy, which does the opposite, which decreases productivity, because the hurdles that you create for business to produce things get more numerous.
Correct.
Okay? So under Labor, under Liberals, you will never fix this.
Yeah.
So just so you know, we've had no wage growth, or very, very nominal wage growth, since 2016.
I'm pretty sure that the term deregulate is actually classified as hate speech now.
Totally, yeah, would not be surprised, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I'll continue. Employment risk from further rate rises. A 0.5% rate rise would be significant given debt levels. And that's what they're saying, because it's likely there's going to be minimum 2 hikes, and it's a quarter point each hike. Likely impacts. Hiring freezes turn to reduced hours, which turn to job losses with about a 6 to 9 month lag after these rate rises come in.
Yep.
Small and medium enterprise, construction, retail and hospitality are most vulnerable. Expected outcomes. Unemployment likely rises 0.4 to 0.6 percentage points. A soft landing is possible, but recession risk increases. Housing market outlook.
Sorry, just a quick note on the unemployment.
Yep.
Be very, very wary of that figure that's quoted in the Australian number, because if you do one Uber shift a week, you're employed. If you're a student, you're employed. There's a strange accounting thing that works for immigrants. So when an immigrant comes here, they might not necessarily be counted as like they get counted on the work side, as in if they're working, but they're not
if they're unemployed.
Well, no, but they're not. So, So you get this like sort of double whammy.
So sort of pretend they don't exist, but then when they get a job, they exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which only falls into one category, never
Correct.
falls into the other category, which means that ratio, that percentage, is wrong.
And I did see another article recently too, which I think we're already at this point because full-time jobs had actually dropped, and the article said, but it's been offset by an increase in part-time jobs. And it's like, no, those are the same jobs. They just used to be full-time, and now they push people to part-time.
Yeah, which is a direct correlation to lack of productivity.
Correct. This is almost finished, and then we'll be able to move on. But so housing market outlook. Australia is resistant to crashes unless unemployment spikes. More likely adjustment mechanisms, mild price corrections, long periods of flat prices. Now this is the one that you need to keep in mind, guys, and especially any of you real estate investors. Real inflation adjusted price declines. So the housing market will continue to look like it's going upward, but the rate of increase compared to the rate of inflation means in real dollar terms, you'll actually be in negatives rather than in positives. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Totally.
Immigration supports demand, but high rates cap borrowing power. Base case, no crash, but poor real returns and affordability pressure. The core conclusion. Australia is choosing stability over prosperity. Immigration props up growth but suppresses wages. High debt limits rate cuts. Weak productivity locks in low real wage growth. Policymakers aim to grind it out rather than reset the system. The pressure is most likely to be released through time, inflation, and stagnation, not a dramatic collapse, with a small correction or long flat period in housing being the most probable outcome.
I've actually got something that came up in the last couple of days that's even more significant than that, which adds to the fire. It's an international story.
Yep.
I don't have any resources for it, but essentially the Japanese government just removed a certain tax, like a revenue stream that they got, which then sent the Japanese bonds to a higher price.
Yep.
Which they own most of America's debt.
Right.
So it's a pretty complicated thing. So because the Japanese government tried to keep their bond levels so low, their debt so cheap, people were switching their US dollars, for example, to yen, buying their debt, borrowing against that, and then buying assets around the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has pumped the prosperity in stock markets, Bitcoin, gold, all that sort of thing. What's happened now, if you own some of that debt and it was at like 0.5, 1% or 2%, it's now 4%. Now, if you weren't making more than 4, you're now underwater.
Yep.
The only way to fix it is to sell your asset at whatever price it is, probably pretty high by today's standard, swap it back to yen and pay it out there. This is going to have massive repercussions on the global scale. There are things happening. Like, again, we're early. We've been banging on about this for years.
Yep.
But every week we seem to have another step closer to the impending collapse.
Yeah, and this is a thing that we've spoken about on the show a few times before, but I think it's worth reiterating at this point. When the times are good, so like one of the things that you're hearing out of Trump at the moment is how the stock market has hit multiple all-time highs this year, like in his first year in office. You know, stock market's going so well and whatever. And too many people out there think that the good times roll forever and that nothing ever pops, nothing ever goes backwards. But it does. And like, so the Australian property market is a good example of that. Everyone thinks that in Australia, property always goes up. And on the long-term trend line, that is true. It doesn't mean it doesn't have small corrections along the way. And it's usually around every 18 years is when we have these small property market corrections. Somewhere between 5 and 15% is typically what we see. And we're essentially due for one now. And the reason why I was having that conversation with ChatGPT is because 2026 is literally the end of the last 18-year cycle since the GFC. So we're due for one. You have to... I was talking to a friend of mine about investing, and he's a big technical analysis guy. He looks at charts, that's how he invests. He reads charts, and he's very good at it. And he asked me if I do technical analysis when I talk about investing and those sorts of things. And I don't, because I don't understand that enough. I'm trying to learn that at the moment, trying to upskill myself. But when I look at markets, I invest based off psychology. So I just look at the world as a giant psychological ecosystem. And when you assume that certain things will happen in the future, you then ask the question as to what do I think the mainstream response to that thing will be? Because as Alex has so eloquently put so many times in the past when it comes to things like the stock market, is the stock market is all based off market sentiment. It's got nothing to do with fundamentals or whether or not a company's got a good product. It's all based on whether or not the fear and greed index, like what level the fear and greed index is at. And, you know, the banks are the perfect example, right? Banking stock prices continue to raise, even though they don't launch any new products. They haven't had a new product for years, but it's just because you've got ETFs which invest in the top 100 ASX companies, for example, and when people buy into the ETF, that ETF is then forced to buy a percentage of those banking stocks, so they just keep raising over time, regardless of whether there's any good news or not. Doesn't even matter about earnings calls and stuff like that. As long as they stay in the top 100 companies, they'll keep getting their shares bought. So you have to just keep in mind the fact that stuff does change, stuff does go wrong, and bubbles do burst. And we look like we are on the cusp of one hell of a bubble burst. Timing is always the most difficult part to predict. You know it's going to happen. You just don't know exactly when it's going to happen. But should we move on to the WEF?
Okay, we're going to do this really, really quick. So let me show. So the World Economic Forum is on right now. I got asked an interesting question this morning. I was talking to the guys at the gym about it. I said, I hate the WEF. And one of the guys asked a great question, which was, why? Oh, well, thank you for asking. Because they've set the agenda for essentially the downfall of civilizations. They're all about globalization. They're all about getting rid of borders. They're all about us eating bugs. They have some of the craziest ideas at this thing. And unfortunately, a lot of that stuff trickles down into our own realities.
Absolutely.
Okay? So,
essentially, the members of the WEF have caused all of the problems that we are experiencing today, that we talk about on this show. The entire time they've been causing the problem, they've been gaslighting us about the fact that these problems even exist in the first place. And now they all fly to Davos in Switzerland to a ski resort and sit around for a week lecturing us about how they're going to solve the problems that they caused.
Yeah, so the jokes last year was there's something like 68 private jets that rock up to Davos, and then the whole note was about reducing CO2 emissions. So it's just crazy. But the last 2 years have been really interesting. Last year, Javier Milei went in there and essentially ripped them new assholes, which I love. I've been watching a lot of it. We've got one clip that will show them. I want to talk about Trump, and then I want to talk about Milei's latest speech, and then we're done. So this one here, this is a great... What he's about to say is basically the gist of Trump and essentially Milei resisting the WEF. And I love the fact that they've come to the WEF to tell the WEF this.
Yeah, and when you say WEF, it's resisting the globalists. So the WEF is essentially the center point of the globalist push that we've all been experiencing for decades.
They're communists.
They're communists, exactly. And they essentially believe in one world government. That's why they have tried to destroy patriotism in every country, because they want all of us to have zero connection with our national identity, so we will never defend ourselves, and we'll all just fall into a one world government that will be ruled by them.
Here's Howard Lutnick.
Okay. We are in Davos at the World Economic Forum, and the Trump administration and myself, we are here to make a very clear point. Globalization has failed the West and the United States of America. It's a failed policy. It is what the WEF has stood for, which is export, offshore, far shore, find the cheapest labor in the world, and the world is a better place for it. The fact is, it has left America behind. It has left the American workers behind. And what we are here to say is that America First is a different model, one that we encourage other countries to consider, which is that our workers come first. We can have policies that impact our workers. Sovereignty is your borders. You're entitled to have borders. You shouldn't offshore your medicine. You shouldn't offshore your semiconductors. You shouldn't offshore your entire industrial base and have it be hollowed out beneath you. You should not be dependent for that which is fundamental to your sovereignty on any other nation. And if you're going to be dependent on someone, it darn well better be your best allies. Okay? And so that is a different way of thinking. It is completely different than the WEF. I viewed the WEF as not a flagpole in the middle, but in fact, they are the flag. Whichever way the wind blew, so it blew. You should have solar, you should have wind. Why are you going to do solar and wind? Why would Europe agree to be net zero in 2030 when they don't make a battery? They don't make a battery. So if they go 2030, they are deciding to be subservient to China, who makes the batteries.
So I love that rant.
Yep, agree.
Trump's rant my favourite highlight, it was an hour and a half, I watched the whole thing.
Yep, I did too.
My favourite clip was talking about the windmills. He's like, China is building these windmills and selling them to stupid people. Stupid people are buying the windmills. China doesn't even use them. They just show them. They're not even moving, and then stupid people buy them. Right?
That's a really good impression too.
That was a banger. He didn't come out guns blazing as much as I thought. He basically told the world he's taking Greenland.
Yep.
He talked about what Howard was saying, where they're going to be energy independent. They're going to maximize like their resources, and the main gist of it was that America's going to be the big daddy of the world now.
Yep.
And a lot of people are going to be offended by that. There's all this talk about the rules order that's now gone.
The rules-based international order.
The rules-based international order. Let me just... I'll easily package that up for you. All that was a different word for US power.
Yeah.
The US set it up after World War II. It's gone through a couple of different iterations. You got NATO, you got the United Nations, right? And they're all supposed to do things, okay? When Trump came in, he realized none of the European countries are paying their bills.
Yep.
You're supposed to pay 2% of your GDP. They're paying nothing.
It really benefited Europe the most.
Yeah, so essentially Europe got access to the US armed forces for nothing.
And all their money. They got a free ride.
Yeah.
Like everyone talks about Trump's tariffs. A lot of the European nations had tariffs on America this entire time.
Yeah, totally. So Trump comes in, he reads it, he goes, you're not paying your bills? You either pay or we're out.
Yep.
And like, well, you can't go out because you're funding like 80% of it. And he's like,
we know.
Yeah. So for people to, we mentioned on the show a couple of weeks ago, international law has to be sort of officiated by the power. Well,
Correct.
The power is the US. We talked about the contingent of European military that was sent to Greenland to defend it. 37 people, Canada, they missed a flight. They couldn't get their 2 troops over. So anyone that reads a history book, anyone who reads a economics textbook will realize that this is not just a fair deal. What we're just not used to is having the guy tell you the truth.
Correct.
You're not ready to hear someone say, I want Greenland because of X, Y, Z. You're used to hearing, we need regime change because we think they've got weapons of mass destruction. Like a lie. Trump's just come out and said, this is what it's for and this is what we're doing.
We have grown up on being lied to by very slick people wearing suits, and that's the world we're used to.
I've heard people like that. They like it.
Way too many people like that.
People just lie to us so it makes us feel good.
Brother, we've just made words illegal in this country.
Yeah.
I saw someone, I think it's Selena versus the Machine or whatever, who put a post up who was talking about the fact that the maximum sentence for, I think it's aggravated assault, is 2 years. And yet we're going to put people in prison for 5 years for words. That's the world we live in the West.
Yeah. And then finally, Javier Milei, I had to watch his.
Can I just read that post? You sent me a post, which I posted on the VK Bros, about how Trump is negotiating the Greenland thing, and I think it's so apt.
Yeah.
So what Alex is saying is true, right? All the stuff, NATO, the UN, the WEF, all of that stuff has mainly benefited Europe for a long time because essentially America's military might has defended everyone and their gigantic economy has funded everyone. And it's always been to the detriment of the United States. Anyway, Trump's coming in and he's just telling it like it is. And he's, like we said on the show last week, he's a big dog doing big dog things. And this is kind of how the world has always been, but we just pretend it's not like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is how the negotiations has essentially gone down about Greenland. Europe, Greenland is not for sale. Trump, we'll pay you $700 billion and give $100,000 to each person in Greenland. Europe, We don't need the US. Greenland is not for sale. NATO. If you try to take Greenland, you are kicked out of NATO. Trump. Okay, kick us and our 5% out of NATO, and the US will take Greenland because your two sleds can't stop me. Europe and NATO. Greenland is not for sale, but the US can use Greenland for what you need. Trump. Okay, we'll keep our money, use Greenland and the rest of the Arctic. Europe. Okay.
They fell right into it, man. They fell right into it. So he said in that meeting, he talked about the history of it and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, at the end of it, he's like, we're taking Greenland. Like, we're getting it. So I think since then there has been negotiations. There's this hilarious video of after the meeting, the president or prime minister of Finland was out, the Denmark and the Greenland guy were out the front smoking cigarettes. Like, oh my God, this is like, we're about to essentially cede sovereignty to this guy that's just in that room. Now, moving on to Javier Milei. I love this guy. This guy is, and the reason why I love him is because...
Sorry, before we get on to Javier Milei, can I just because I looked that up, can I just bring up some breaking news?
Yeah.
Reported from Rukshan Fernando. Melbourne North Police today confirmed they are investigating a prejudice-motivated incident against a member of the LGBTIQA+ community at Kensington's JJ Holland Park on the 2nd of January. Around 4:20 p.m. that day, a 34-year-old man walking his dogs was subjected to an offensive slur by an unknown male jogger. The man, described as 50s, age Caucasian, with a shaved head and wearing dark running shorts, fled the location. The victim managed to photograph the individual, and police have since released CCTV footage as part of their inquiry. Police condemned the incident, asserting, in quotes, "There is absolutely no place for hate-based behaviour in our society. The authorities are encouraging anyone with knowledge of the event to contact Crime Stoppers or provide anonymous tips online."
That's got to be a troll. It can't be real.
No, that's the first case of its kind.
Yeah, man. So the reason why I like Milei and why I'm keeping an eye on Argentina is because I talk a big game about libertarianism. I talk about how the government is the problem. You know, it was fit for purpose for a period of time. Then they got buck wild. They're spending our money like it's going out of fashion. They think communism's the answer, which is just will make a whole society collapse. It does every time. And yet...
But at least it centralises power in their hands, which is what I like.
Yeah. Okay, so... And when I tell people this, especially Australians, they get visibly... like, they're fearful of it. They can't understand a world without rules or legislation or the heavy hand of government, because a bird that's born in a cage doesn't know that it's a prisoner.
Yep.
All right. So because I read about these things and I want to learn about these things, and when I started reading about libertarianism, I was like, oh, actually, it kind of fits in with all the, you know, it's the best. It forms to natural human tendencies far better than any other system. If you look after yourself, you're in a great position to help others. And the best person to decide if what's best for you is you. Mm-hmm. And you should have private property rights. The state's only job is to protect your private property. And if you have private property, you will make that property better than it was before because it's in your best interest. And that's what the basis of libertarianism, which builds the best societies. I would argue that the American experiment is the best example of how in a very short amount of time it became a wild frontier to the top dog in the world.
Yeah.
Okay? China is a communist country, and the only way they made money is by having two essentially full-blown capitalistic libertarian zones, being Shenzhen and I forgot the other one. That's where all their money comes from. So even their experiment, they know it too. Okay. So this speech of Javier Milei, it's only 30 minutes. It's dubbed, so he does it in his own language. And all he does is literally lay out all the evidence from scholars and authors and intellectuals that every aspect of liberty, how it's been proven in the world, and how the opposite of that is parasitic.
Yep.
And it was literally just a lesson of like everything you hear at this forum, everything you stand for, goes against all the available evidence.
Yep.
Every provable faction, what you guys push is categorically upside down.
And it goes against basic human nature.
And he's proving it in Argentina. He's brought inflation from 300% to 30% in 18 months. He's brought 20% of the world of their population out of poverty. All right, there was 50% that were living below the poverty line.
Yeah.
The investment, their stock market has doubled since he's been there. The value of the stock market. That loan that everyone was talking about, I had friends of mine who were like, oh, sucked in your libertarian guy's shit. He's had to borrow. He got bailed out $20 billion from the US. He's already paid it back.
Yeah.
No one's ever paid debts back. No one. He's done it. So when I'm saying that our government here are parasites and are the problem, I'm not saying it because like some flippant crazy thought. I'm saying it because it's true, and there are other places in the world who govern in a completely different way that are kicking more goals than we are.
Yeah.
Shout out to Javier Milei. Shout out to Trump. And fuck the World Economic Forum. And globalization hasn't worked. I'm glad that we're flipping the script. If Albo was smart, which he's not, you would be going up to Big Daddy, doing deals, and prospering along with... America's about to have this supercharged prosperity.
Yeah.
And you can either hitch to the wagon, or you can be obsolete like what Europe is.
Yep, and unfortunately, I believe that these hate speech laws were all brought in purely based on the fact that right-wing populism is winning all around the world, and they will prevent you from being able to see it online as they arrest people or force people to self-censor, just like they did during COVID.
Yep. And on that note...
Thanks very much for joining us, guys. Sorry about all the technical issues, and we will see you all next week.
See ya.